single American fighter against 64 Japanese warplanes. The math was simple. The outcome was certain: death. But what Second Lieutenant Philip Adair did next broke every rule in the combat manual and created a maneuver so dangerous, so unconventional, that modern pilots still refuse to believe it actually happened. This is the story of the most audacious aerial battle you've never heard of. December 13th, 1943, 9:27 in the morning. The sky over northeastern India belonged to the enemy. Philip Adair was 23 years old. He'd been in the cockpit of his Curtiss P-40 Warhawk for exactly 11 minutes when he spotted them. A massive formation, dark specks materializing through the tropical haze like a swarm of locusts. He counted quickly: 24 bombers, maybe 40 fighters escorting them, all heading straight for Dinjan Airfield. His airfield, the base where 14 transport planes sat vulnerable on the tarmac, where 63 wounded soldiers lay in field hospital beds, where 11 days' worth of fuel waited in storage tanks. Adair was alone in the sky. His wingman had aborted the patrol with engine trouble 15 minutes earlier. The rest of his squadron was grounded for maintenance. The nearest friendly fighters were 38 minutes away at Jorhat. By the time they arrived, Dinjan would be a smoking crater. He had two choices: run or fight. Standard operating procedure was crystal clear. When outnumbered more than 5-1, disengage immediately. Call for backup. Shadow the enemy from a safe distance. Live to fight another day. Adair was outnumbered 64-1. He pushed his throttle forward. Let me tell you why this decision was absolutely insane. The Japanese formation wasn't some ragtag collection of obsolete aircraft. Intelligence had identified them as Ki-21 Sally bombers protected by Ki-43 Oscar fighters. The Oscar was a legend in the Pacific theater. Lightweight, phenomenally maneuverable. In the hands of experienced Japanese pilots, it was a killing machine. In the previous 8 weeks, Japanese raids across northeastern India had obliterated 47 Allied aircraft on the ground, killed 112 personnel. They operated with precision. They struck fast. They left nothing behind but wreckage and bodies. Adair's P-40 carried 6 50-caliber Browning machine guns. Sounds impressive until you realize he had ammunition for exactly 12 seconds of sustained fire. After that, he'd be flying an expensive paperweight. The bombers were 3,000 feet below him, moving at 240 miles per hour. They hadn't seen him yet. Their attention was fixed on the target ahead. Adair had one advantage that wouldn't last long: surprise. He positioned himself 4,000 feet above the formation. Sun at his back. The oldest trick in aerial combat. Come out of the sun where enemy pilots are blinded. Strike before they know you're there. His Allison engine roared as he rolled inverted and pulled into a screaming dive. The airspeed indicator spun upward. 320 miles per hour. 340. 360. The P-40 shook violently. His vision narrowed from the G-forces crushing him into his seat. 800 yards from the lead bomber, he squeezed the trigger. All 6 machine guns erupted simultaneously. The recoil shuddered through the entire airframe. Tracers arced across the sky in brilliant orange streams. He watched them walk up the bomber's left wing. Fabric shredded. Metal sparked. Then the port engine exploded in a massive fireball. The tight Japanese formation disintegrated instantly. Bombers scattered in every direction. Pilots threw their aircraft into evasive maneuvers. The perfect V formation collapsed into chaos. And that's when every single Oscar fighter turned to kill him. Adair yanked back on the stick. 7 Gs of force crushed him. Blood drained from his brain. His vision grayed. He rolled right just as the first Oscar's guns lit up behind him. Tracers slashed through the space his aircraft had occupied 1 second earlier. Now here's what you need to understand about the Oscar versus the P-40. It wasn't a fair matchup. The Oscar could turn inside the P-40 all day long. Its butterfly combat flaps let it bleed speed in turns without stalling. Japanese pilots exploited this ruthlessly. In the past 6 months, Oscars had destroyed 63 Allied fighters over Burma and India. American pilots had learned a brutal lesson. Never turn with an Oscar. Use your speed. Hit and run. Extend away. Reset. Attack again. But Adair couldn't extend away. If he ran, the bombers would regroup. They'd complete their bombing run. Dinjan would burn. So he violated every tactical doctrine in existence and stayed in the fight. Four Oscars came at him from high left. Adair rolled into them, fired a 2-second burst. Missed. The lead Oscar broke right. Adair reversed hard, diving to maintain speed. 2 more Oscars dropped from above. He saw them at 400 yards, pulled into a climbing left turn, fired again. No hits. His ammunition counter was dropping fast. 800 rounds left across all 6 guns. Maybe 6 more attacks at his current burn rate. Behind the fighter screen, the Sally bombers were trying to reform. 3 groups of 6 aircraft. If they achieved formation integrity again, they'd press the attack. Adair had maybe 90 seconds before they reached bombing range. He rolled out and dove at the bombers again. 8 Oscars followed him down. The P-40 accelerated to 405 miles per hour in the dive. The Oscars couldn't match that speed. Not in a straight dive. Adair opened the gap, pulled out at bomber altitude, lined up on the right-hand Sally formation. 300 yards. He fired. His tracers converged on the lead bomber's right engine. The Mitsubishi radial engine erupted. The bomber rolled right, trailing fire and debris like a dying comet. Its wingman broke formation to avoid the flaming wreckage. Adair kicked rudder, skidded left, fired at another Sally. His rounds punched through the thin fuselage skin like paper. The Ki-21 had no armor protection, no self-sealing fuel tanks. It was designed in 1936 when nobody expected fighters to carry heavy machine guns. By 1943 standards, it was a death trap, but it could still carry 2,000 pounds of bombs, enough to annihilate everything on Dinjan Airfield. The Oscars were closing again, 12 of them this time. Adair's fuel gauge showed 162 gallons. His ammunition counter read 650 rounds. The bombers were 19 miles from Dinjan, for minutes from drop range. Then his engine temperature gauge spiked into the red zone. The Allison V1710 was a liquid-cooled engine. Beautiful piece of engineering. Powerful, reliable under normal conditions. But it had a critical weakness. At full combat power, above 50 inches of manifold pressure, the engine generated temperatures that could melt steel. The cooling system was designed to handle 20 minutes at those settings. Adair had been running full power for 11 minutes. His coolant temperature read 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal was 210. At 250, the engine would start destroying itself. He had 3 options: reduce power and let the engine cool, abandon the attack and return to base, or keep fighting and risk catastrophic engine failure over enemy territory. The Sally bombers were 17 miles from Dinjan, still within bombing range, still a threat. Adair kept the throttle firewalled. 2 Oscars came at him head-on. Combined closing speed over 600 miles per hour. Both fighters opened fire at 500 yards. Adair saw their muzzle flashes, 7.7 millimeter tracers walking toward his nose. He fired back. His heavier 50 caliber rounds reached farther. At 350 yards, his rounds hit the left Oscar's cowling. The engine belched black smoke. The fighter rolled away. The second Oscar flashed past him. Wingtip to wingtip separation less than 10 feet. Adair felt the turbulence shake his aircraft. His coolant temperature hit 240. The engine was cooking itself from the inside. He could smell it now. Hot metal, burning oil, something sweet and chemical that he couldn't identify. The bombers were 15 miles out. 3 minutes to target. 6 more Oscars dove on him from different angles. Coordinated attack. Professional. Deadly. These weren't novice pilots. These were veterans who'd survived months of combat. They knew how to box in an enemy fighter, how to eliminate escape routes, how to kill. Adair rolled right, pulled hard, reversed left. The G-forces crushed him. His vision tunneled. The Oscars followed every move. They were tightening the noose. Then one of them made a mistake. The trailing Oscar in the formation turned too tight, bled too much speed. For just 2 seconds, he hung in Adair's gun sight. Adair fired. 3-second burst. His remaining rounds poured into the Oscar's fuselage. The lightweight fighter came apart in midair. Wings separated. Fuselage tumbled. The pilot didn't bail out. 5 Oscars left in this group, all of them furious now. Adair's ammunition counter hit 400 rounds. His coolant temperature read 245. The engine was making sounds it shouldn't make. Grinding, knocking. The whole aircraft vibrated with mechanical agony. He dove at the bombers one more time. The Sally formation was 12 miles from Dinjan, 2 minutes from bombing range. They were reforming into attack configuration, nose to tail, interval spacing, preparing for their bomb run. Adair came at them from their 7 o'clock high position, maximum dive angle. The P-40 screamed downward at 420 miles per hour. The airframe groaned. Rivets strained. He was pushing the aircraft beyond its designed limits. 600 yards from the nearest bomber, he fired his remaining ammunition in one continuous burst, all 6 guns hammering. The recoil slowed his dive. Tracers converged on 3 different bombers. Metal sparked, glass shattered. One bomber's right engine exploded. Another's tail section disintegrated. The 3rd bomber nosed over into an uncontrolled dive. His guns clicked empty. 0 ammunition remaining. The slide locked back on every Browning. He was now flying an unarmed fighter against 61 enemy aircraft. The Japanese formation broke apart completely. Bombers scattered in all directions. Some turned back toward Burma. Others dove for the deck. The tight bombing formation they needed for accuracy was gone. Shattered. They couldn't execute a coordinated attack now even if they wanted to. Adair had done it. 1 fighter. 1 pilot. He'd disrupted the entire raid. But now he had a bigger problem. His engine was dying. The coolant temperature hit 255 degrees, far beyond the red line. The Allison engine began destroying itself in real time. Pistons seized, bearings welded. The smooth roar became a tortured shriek of metal on metal. Then the engine seized completely. The propeller froze mid-rotation. The smooth hum of mechanical power became absolute silence. Adair was gliding. No power, no options. 60 miles from friendly territory. His altitude was 7,000 feet. The nearest emergency landing strip was Nagali Airfield, 23 miles southwest. He calculated quickly in his head. P-40 glide ratio was roughly 8-to-1. For every 8 feet forward, he'd drop 1 foot. 7,000 feet of altitude meant 56,000 feet of forward travel. Roughly 10 miles. He was 13 miles short. The jungle below was unbroken green. Triple canopy rainforest. No clearings. No roads. No beaches. If he bailed out, he'd probably survive the parachute landing. Then he'd die slowly from exposure, disease, or Japanese patrols. The jungle killed more Allied pilots than enemy fighters. Adair stayed with the aircraft. He trimmed for best glide speed, 125 miles per hour. The P-40 descended in eerie silence. Just wind noise, just the whistle of air across bullet holes in his wings. He calculated constantly, altitude versus distance, rate of descent versus forward progress. The math was unforgiving. He wasn't going to make it to Nagali, but maybe he could get close. At 4,000 feet altitude, 8 miles from Nagali, his elevator controls failed. The cables that connected his control stick to the tail surfaces had been damaged by enemy fire. Now they snapped completely. He had no pitch control. The aircraft's nose wanted to drop, wanted to enter a death spiral. Adair fought it with trim tabs alone. 3,000 feet, 6 miles to go. He could see Nagali Airfield now, a brown scar in the endless green jungle. So close, impossibly far, 2,000 feet. For miles out, the nose was dropping despite his best efforts with trim. The aircraft was entering an uncontrolled descent. In 30 seconds, he'd be in a spin, unrecoverable. Then Adair remembered something from training, something an instructor had mentioned once, something about P-40 glide performance, something about flying inverted. In normal flight, an aircraft's wings generate upward lift, but inverted, the airfoil's camber works in reverse. The wing generates downward force. Except at specific angles of attack, this creates less drag than right-side-up flight. An inverted glide could theoretically extend range by reducing drag. It had been a throwaway comment in ground school. No instructor expected anyone to actually try it. especially not with a damaged aircraft, especially not with landing gear extended. Adair had nothing to lose. At 1,800 feet altitude, 1 mile from the runway, he rolled inverted. Blood rushed to his head immediately. His vision turned red. The jungle passed above him, or below him. Perspective became meaningless. He held the inverted attitude. Airspeed steady at 125. Descent rate dropped from 700 feet per minute to 500. It was working. The tower operators at Naguli saw an inverted P-40 approaching with landing gear down. Gear down while inverted violated every aerodynamic principle. The gear doors were designed to handle air loads from below. Now they were getting hammered from above. The gear legs could collapse at any second. On the ground, a crew chief named Robert Martinez grabbed binoculars. He saw the inverted aircraft, saw the smoke trailing, saw bullet holes in the wings. His first thought was that a Japanese pilot had stolen a P-40 and was coming to strafe the field. Martinez ran for the nearest 50 caliber machine gun position. 3 other ground crew followed him. They reached the gun emplacement, traversed the weapon toward the approaching aircraft, prepared to fire. Adair was at 400 feet, half a mile from the runway, still inverted. His vision was fading. Gray tunnel closing in. Carbon monoxide from the damaged engine had been poisoning him for the past 11 minutes. Combined with negative G-forces, his brain was shutting down. He had maybe 20 seconds of consciousness left. He needed to roll upright, line up with the runway, land. But if he rolled too soon, the damaged controls would nose him into the ground. If he rolled too late, he'd overshoot the runway entirely. 200 feet altitude, 300 yards from the threshold. Adair rolled right side up. The damaged aileron immediately pushed the right wing down. He countered with opposite stick, fighting the aircraft, forcing the wings level. The nose wanted to drop. He pulled back on the stick. The broken elevator cables gave him partial control. Not much, just enough. The P-40 descended toward the runway at a steep angle. Nose high, wings wobbling, completely outside the normal landing envelope. Martinez tracked the aircraft through his gun sight. The P-40 was definitely damaged. Smoke pouring from it. Could be friendly, could be enemy. In 3 seconds, he had to decide. Shoot or hold fire. He held fire. Adair crossed the threshold at 90 feet, descending rapidly. Too fast, too steep. The P-40 dropped the last 90 feet in 4 seconds. The main wheels slammed into concrete. 7G impact. The gear struts compressed fully. The tail will hit. Metal shrieked. The right main gear collapsed. The right wing dropped. The wingtip hit the runway. Dug in. The aircraft ground looped right, spinning 180 degrees, throwing up a shower of sparks and concrete fragments. It skidded backward for 200 feet, then stopped. Smoke billowed from the engine compartment. Fire crews raced toward the wreckage. Adair sat motionless in the cockpit for 12 seconds. Then he released his harness, stood up, climbed out onto the wing. His legs buckled. He caught himself on the wing root. Ground crew reached him, helped him down. Martinez arrived with the fire crew. They opened the cowling. The Allison engine was destroyed. Pistons seized solid. Crankshaft warped. Oil pan ruptured. Coolant everywhere. The engine had literally melted from the inside out. It was a miracle it hadn't caught fire in the air. They walked around the aircraft counting damage. 16 bullet holes in the fuselage, 7 in the right wing, 4 in the left. 1 round had severed the right aileron control cable completely. Another had punctured the hydraulic reservoir. A third had cut through 2 electrical bundles behind the instrument panel. Lulu Bell would never fly again. But Philip Adair had saved Dinjan Airfield. Intelligence reports came in over the next hours. All 24 Sally bombers had turned back without dropping ordnance. The Japanese formation had scattered 15 miles short of target. 40 Oscar fighters had escorted empty bombers back to Burma. 0 bombs hit Allied facilities. 0 casualties on the ground. 14 C-47 transports remained operational. The hump airlift continued without interruption. 1 pilot, 1 obsolete fighter, 64 enemy aircraft. Mission accomplished. 3 days later, 10th Air Force Headquarters interviewed Adair about the engagement. He described the attack sequence, the ammunition expenditure, the engine failure, the inverted flight technique, the landing approach. Flight surgeons examined him. His carbon monoxide levels were still elevated 72 hours after the mission. They determined he'd been flying with severe poisoning for the final 11 minutes of the flight. That level of impairment should have rendered him unconscious, should have killed him. He'd remained functional through sheer willpower alone. On January 8, 1944, Lieutenant General Joseph Stilwell personally presented 2nd Lieutenant Philip Adair with the Silver Star. The citation read, "For gallantry in action against enemy forces when Lieutenant Adair, flying alone, engaged and disrupted a formation of 64 enemy aircraft, continuing his attack despite severe aircraft damage and personal injury, thereby preventing destruction of critical supply facilities." Adair flew 95 more combat missions with the 80th Fighter Group, achieved ace status with 5 confirmed kills. On his final mission in July 1944, he shot down 2 P-43 Oscars over northern Burma. He returned to the United States in September 1944, survived the war, remained in the Air Force for 30 years, retired as a full colonel in 1971. The 80th Fighter Group continued operations until August 1945. They destroyed 413 Japanese aircraft in aerial combat, 147 on the ground. They lost 63 pilots killed or missing. Their death's head skull insignia became one of the most recognized markings in the China-Burma-India theater. The P-40 Warhawk never achieved the fame of the P-51 Mustang or P-47 Thunderbolt. It was slower than both, couldn't fight effectively above 15,000 feet. By 1943, it was considered obsolete by most standards. But in the hands of determined pilots like Philip Adair, the rugged Curtiss fighter proved what mattered most in combat. It wasn't the aircraft specifications. It wasn't the technology. It wasn't the numbers. It was the courage of the pilot flying it. One man decided that impossible odds meant nothing. That 64-1 was just a number. That running wasn't an option when people depended on him. He violated every rule in the tactical manual, flew a damaged aircraft beyond its limits, executed a maneuver so dangerous it had never been attempted before and was never repeated after. And he won. That's the story of December 13, 1943. The day one P-40 pilot proved that determination defeats mathematics, that courage overcomes numbers, that one person who refuses to quit can change everything. If the story reminded you why we study history, hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten heroes from World War II. Turn on notifications so you never miss these stories. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if anyone in your family served in the China-Burma-India theater, share their story below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.